All right, y'all, speaking of weak, y'all, former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos just proved she got to be as dumb as David and everybody in Project 21. Here's the tweet her Simple Simon ass posted. This is why she got booed at, and y'all pull a video up when she spoke at Bethune-Cookman when they turned their back and booed her trifling ass. This fool said students' knowledge of U.S. history is at an all-time low. This is what you do when you teach CRT, DEI, and the 1619 Project instead of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Gettysburg Address. Y'all, I can't. Why did I write my book White Fear? Because of folk like her ass. Then she goes on Fox News claiming, oh, wokeness is the reason why our kids are not learning. Y'all want to hear Simple Simon? Here her ass go.
Line graph, if you will. 8th grade history scores now hitting an all-time low in this country. To what do you attribute this drop-off for our nation's children?
Well, Sandra, clearly the extended closures during COVID had something to do with it. But the reality is that those scores were headed that direction well before the pandemic. In fact, in 2017, I made a speech on National Constitution Day talking about these plummeting scores. This is what happens when you teach DEI, CRT, and the 1619 Project instead of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Gettysburg Address. This is appalling, and when we consider that 87 out of 100 students are not even close to proficient in knowing U.S. history, it's a very concerning trend. And we should all be alarmed and say enough. Our government-run schools are not doing the job, and we need a change.
Joining us is Matt Gonzales, the Director of Education, Justice, Research, and Organizing Collaborative at NYU Metro Center. Here is what I think is absolutely hilarious, Matt. This fool, Betsy DeVos, actually said CRT, DEI, and the 1619 Project, and she said, I gave a speech on Constitution Day in 2017. Here we go to my iPad. Matt, the 1619 Project wasn't published until August of 2019, 2 years after her dumb ass gave that speech. Matt, do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Roland.
Take it away.
Thank you so much for. Yeah, I mean, I think the point you just made about when she made that speech and when the 1619 Project was released, I think ultimately reinforces the fact that Betsy DeVos has zero credibility to be talking about what good instruction is, what good curriculum looks like, and what a good school looks like, right? I think what we all should understand is that Ms. DeVos has never been a teacher, did not send her children to public schools, and has never worked inside of a public school, right? And so what we also know about these narratives around the anti-woke, anti-CRT kind of talking point that the right wing has established is that that's not rooted in reality. It's not rooted in fact. What it is rooted in is fear and racism, right? And so what I tend to think about these frameworks and these ideas is really about the Southern strategy for education, right? And so this attack on the 1619 Project, which is a really profound and deeply accurate historical account that our young people actually need to understand and learn about our country. Critical race theory, which, to be really clear, is what graduate students in law schools are learning, not what kindergartners are learning, but is not being taught in our traditional public schools.
Look, all they're trying to put anything dealing with race, ethnicity. Look, I called out Christopher Rufo and when they were trying to do this here. Betsy DeVos is a liar. And what she's trying to sit here and play these games with, oh, this is the reason. No, it's not the reason. It's the fact that people like her, who was grossly, let me be clear, Betsy DeVos was grossly unqualified to be the Secretary of Education. And the problem is when dumbasses like her are put in leadership positions that make it harder for our kids to learn.
Right, and we understand really from looking at the history and what happened is that Ms. DeVos purchased her seat, right? She made a tremendous number of donations to the former administration. And again, as you said, had zero qualifications to be in this role that is crucial for our public education. But I think what's really important for folks to know is that just while most Americans started to learn about Ms. DeVos when she became the Education Secretary, her work has actually been influencing state and national education policy for decades, right? She has been behind the scenes, pushing anti-union policies across the country, pushing privatization policies to undermine and defund traditional public educational spaces. She's also been, while in office, was doing a pretty terrible job overseeing the student loan issues and has come out to and attacked the student loan forgiveness programs. And so, again, I think what we understand is that anyone who has been trying to traffic in this kind of fear-mongering and racism, these are not new arguments. These are not new fights. There have been culture wars in education for the past 50 years. This is just the culture war du jour for the right wing. And I think it's really important that we understand who is funding these right-wing groups to go out and act wild at school boards, to attack and dox teachers, and to be really clear that over 25 states in this country have passed legislation that is attacking, critical race theory, attacking the 1619 Project, attacking LGBTQ students. And all of that is designed to undermine and dismantle public education so that Ms. DeVos and her friends who love to privatize schools can sweep right in and pick up the money, the taxpayer money that we use that is needed to defend our traditional public educational spaces.
Larry, you're a college professor, and the bottom line is here. There literally is nothing of substance that comes out of this woman's mouth. All it is gaslighting and just feeding the white fear of the folks at Fox News and those who watched it.
So let's remember, soon after being confirmed as Secretary of Education, she made a comment about Howard University as if Black folks had a choice to attend PWIs and not had to attend HBCUs. And remember, she had to walk back that comment. So
yeah, because she don't know a damn thing about history.
Right. That's how she started off her role as Secretary of Education, having to walk back a comment when Black folks were suffering from de jure segregation and had no choice but to attend HBCUs. So when she talks about, like you said, Roland, when she talks about history, first of all, she started off by making an error almost like week one as being Secretary of Education. So she's not one to talk. My colleague there that's talked about DeVos and that family in terms of how they've been undermining public education for decades, and that's true. The other thing I want to add, Roland, is this conversation about CRT and 1619 Project. These are all dog whistles. Let's just call it what it is. And the bottom line is, these are, when you talk about your book, people are afraid of a country that is now, over the next couple of decades, will predominantly be people from minoritized backgrounds. So let's be clear about what this is all about. This is about power and control and not about democracy, and certainly not about history.
Pamela, again, we ain't dealing with, she ain't the brightest bulb in a dark room, okay? And so, again, it's what can I say that's gonna rile up white people? Oh, that's why my kid not learning, and we should be teaching the Declaration of Independence and the Gettysburg Address. You so stupid that they barely teach that anyway. Here's the question, and this is why Fox News is so dumb. This is real simple. Hey, Betsy, when the last time you been in a classroom? Oops. You've never been in a classroom.
In the state of Texas, they are now wanting to put the 10 Commandments in all the classrooms. Well, first of all, if we had teachers who were allowed to teach, we would have a better opportunity for our children to learn. You have, teachers being told what to teach and what you cannot teach, what you can say, what you cannot say. How is it that in a social studies class in Texas, you can't discuss current issues? Really? Really? So, we have to realize and be always truthful to understand, again, critical race theory came about in the 70s. I tell folks, if somebody criticizes, if they can't give you the accurate history, they don't know what they're talking about. Nobody's teaching that unless it's at the graduate level, law school, and you got to know what it is. So what they are doing is they are trying to indoctrinate people with their own ideas to give this scary thing. Oh my God, these people of color are going to come. They're going to take over. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. And I think that, particularly teachers, parents, learn all you can and teach your children. Start at home. Because if we depend on the school system, we might be in some issues here because, again, teachers are not allowed to be teachers.
Mustafa, look again. It's beyond stupid. But people need to understand what is actually happening by folks like DeVos and what they're attempting to do. They want white control. They do not want to see black people and Latinos and Asian Americans and Native Americans do not want to see us included. They want to continue the white fantasy of how America was created and how wonderful and perfect and great everything has been.
Yeah, and it's also a part of the 2024 strategy. And we know it's been going on for a number of years now, but they're ramping it up because they understand if they can create chaos, if they can create fear, then they have a stronger chance of actually winning these elections, both local, county, state, and federal. So we need to understand the game that's being played. You also got to understand the messenger. So when Betsy DeVos was Secretary of Education, there was a ranking that was done, and she was one of the lowest in the Trump administration. So hold on to that for a second. If you are the lowest in the Trump administration, and we saw individuals that were being put in positions who had no track records leading these agencies and departments, how bad are you if you're the lowest of individuals who are not even qualified to hold these positions? So you got to understand the game that's going on and how these types of folks will try and manipulate the truth so that they can garner the things that they've been looking for. And of course, as everybody has shared, it is all about holding on to power. It is about trying to figure out a way like they did in South Africa to know that when you are the minority, which, white brothers and sisters will end up being, how do you still make sure that you can leverage resources? How can you leverage privilege? How can you make sure that you stay in power?
Dean, I'm sorry, Matt, this is very simple, and that is, if we want to deal with what's happening with dropping test scores, then you really address what the issue is. And it has nothing to do with any of this. But this is, again, the game they're playing because they want to present a fictionalized version of what America has always been. And their attitude is, there's no blemish. Everything was wonderful and perfect and just and good. They don't like the fact that people are learning the real about America and its founding.
Right, Roland. And, I think this is so much about an effort to erase, the history of the accurate history of this country, right? The accurate contributions that Black and African Americans have made to creating this economy, creating the country that we live in, really creating the wealth that this country resides on, right? There's also an effort to, what I started seeing is, right, shortly after the January 6th insurrection, there were bills all across the country to limit voting rights. There was then these efforts to erase what was happening in social and current events and history, right? And so this is another current effort to erase the history of this country, and we're living in it right now, right? And again, so what we're seeing across the country with book bans, with attacks on LGBTQ students, with these efforts to suggest that CRT is this boogeyman being taught in our schools. My team just did a national research survey looking at the 3 biggest curriculum companies in this country, and we scored those on whether or not their curriculum was culturally responsive. What we saw from each of these 3 companies, who again, most of the kids in traditional public schools are probably receiving some version of curriculum from these companies, was that each of them scored culturally destructive, right? And so this narrative that we have this woke education rampant across our country, I wish we did, right? I really wish We had teachers and schools that had the capacity to really give students an accurate telling of history. But unfortunately, the history that I got as a student was inaccurate, Eurocentric, and whitewashed. And the same is true for students today. And so this idea that it's CRT and 1619 is the reason that kids are struggling in history, I think we need to look at the fact that we have, and are still in a global pandemic, that American public schools are more segregated than they were in the 1960s, that schools that are majority white, because of that segregation, get $23 billion more than schools that are serving Black and brown kids. And so if we really want to talk about the problem, if you're hungry, you can't learn how to read, right? And so we have schools or states across the country that are eliminating free lunch programs while they're banning books, right? And so I think we need to really put this in perspective for the audience to know that this is all dog whistles, and this is all part of a 2024 election strategy that should not work. But my fear and concern is that white Americans are constantly looking for excuses to vote for the fascist party, right? And whatever they can grab onto, they'll do it.
Oh, absolutely. And I just need people to understand this thing is real. And so if you sit at home and not vote, guess what? Idiots like that will be in power. Matt Gonzales, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.